Hey, you know what's really stupid? I'll tell you what stupid is. Stupid is moving heavy steel machinery out in the freezing cold and sweating while you're doing it. You end up with hypothermia and it makes you sick for a couple days. Oh man, I had some bad hypothermia. That was not smart. That's kind of like stupid compounded on top of another level of stupid. It's interesting how intelligent people will do some of the dumbest things, and I get focused and I ignore things. So, man, I actually had an out-of-body experience. I was so ill from the hypothermia, where my core body temperature had dropped. Anyway, getting onto the topic here, I have a chart here that you can download in the link below, and it's a very simple chart. You may not need to download it, but I actually love making videos about the simple stuff and the logical stuff that these other YouTube photography channels are utterly and completely clueless about because they just don't have a clue, or they just, I don't know, I think they're probably busy with their own little lives and, wives and kids and, parties and whatever the hell else it is that normal people do, apparently. I myself, over the years, have joked about people that ask about a new lens that I'll review, and we'll say, well, how sharp is it? It may or may not be applicable. Now, this is not hard and fast. There is obviously crossover. There are certain lenses that are both sharp and have amazing bokeh, like this. This is the 23mm 1.4, or for example, the 16mm f1.4. But there's these three primary categories. The question would be, how does it render? How sharp is it? And what's its bokeh? And I find it amazing that no other YouTube video has kind of made a simplex declaration, because when people ask me about what to buy, you can't answer that question intelligently. It's completely impossible. What should I buy? It's like, well, what's the budget, which is the obvious question, and secondly, what is it to be used for? You would recommend a completely different camera and lens combination for if someone just does like bird and wildlife photography, than someone that does architecture and product photography. It's like, well, what camera should I buy? Well, nobody can answer that question. There's not a single person that can answer that, and if they do, based upon that limited information, they're giving you bad information, false information. So the people, and I've, like I said, I've joked about it for years, people would say, how sharp is it? How sharp is it? I mean, that's as unintelligent and ignorant as someone were to buy a wine based upon its alcohol content. Now, I don't drink, but I mean, it's a pretty good analogy. Why would you do that? That is not relevant unless you're, trying to get smashed, obviously. And, you got $4 and you want to buy whatever has the highest alcohol content. Sharpness and a second subcategory usually go together, which is why I put it in here, about how fast it is. The lens is Autofocus System, and there's literally 10 different types of autofocus mech. There's technically 12 between all platforms: Canon, Nikon, Fujifilm, so on and so forth, if you take them collectively. This is applicable to product photography, corporate business photography for corporate websites, macro, sports action, wildlife, especially sports action wildlife, where you have to do a lot of cropping and having the most amount of translational accuracy on that. Also, too, for macro, but especially for product and reproduction photography, where you're reproducing an item, say a museum. They need absolute reproduction, not only for color balance, but of absolute accuracy and acuity for the sharpness of the image of what needs to be rendered. Photojournalism. However, some of the best photojournalistic shots, the most famous ones, are fuzzy, blurry shots, but everybody knows what the hell the image is. But this is generally applicable because photojournalism does a lot of heavy cropping, usually, depending on the type, as does sports action wildlife. Architecture, landscape photography. So you actually have these two primary categories that almost always fall in line. How sharp is it and how fast is it? Now there is crossover. It's not to say this is not artistic photography. Landscape photography is very artistic, obviously. Photojournalism and all these categories are artistic and exposing the values of what someone wants to render in the composition of the shot. But it is, by and large, technical photography, where these other two are artistic. Sharpness is not the most funny thing if you've ever shot medium format before, and like all the GFX lenses are very sharp. Some are more sharp than others. Is you could take a picture of the most beautiful person on Earth and zoom in at 300-400%, and they absolutely look horrible. You can see subcutaneous blood vessels, zits, whiteheads, and black. You can see everything you don't want to see in a person's face. Sharpness is not paramount for portraiture, obviously. So these have these other two primary categories that are fundamentally at their core artistic. Not that all of this isn't artistic, of course, but talk about street photography, weddings, specifically, especially black and white photography, portraiture and fashion and wedding photography, how it renders. Bokeh, and of course there's crossover here, bokeh, for portraiture and abstract. So I actually have always been peeved, and it shows a lack of understanding when someone asks about how sharp it is, because that is not a relevant question. Do you do photography? You're primarily doing photography that is about sharpness. You know, product photography, macro, very, very important. There is nothing more important in macro photography than how friggin' sharp it is. I mean, it just is everything. Also, too, for product photography. Now, you can't see it over here, but I've been selling leather bags. It's a Cobra Class 26. It's this obnoxiously huge 350-pound leather sewing machine over here. Now it's like a mid-range sewing machine. Here's a perfect example. Someone asking how sharp it is like saying how thick of a leather can it sew through. Now there's a machine that's like $6,000 more expensive than this one. I know you can't see it over here. It's just absolutely titanic. Not that this sucker isn't titanic. That's what nearly killed me trying to get it into the house. But you would not want, you know, the machine that sews literally through an inch of leather designed for horse saddle. Well, I'm going to buy the machine that, you know, sews the thickest leather. Well, it's a bad idea if you're going to do like basically 95% of leather sewing machine work, because the obnoxious machine is, you know, kind of like hunting little birds with, you know, a tank destroying armory piece. It's just not for that. So it's the right tool for the right job. I guess I should have said that in short, right tool for the right job. So consider the chart also too in making lenses, lens purchases. You know, ask yourself, what's my budget, and what exactly am I trying to do? Sharpness in portraiture is not all that damn important. Every lens for the past 30 years, with some rare exceptions, are more than sharp enough for portraiture. They just are. The most beautiful people in the world look insanely ugly at 100, 200, 400%. You just don't need it. It's not a good thing. There are some rare exceptions there. But asking how sharp it is not, you know, for black and white, the very best lens is not my opinion. It's the fact, as an expert of lenses, and I am. I'm more of an expert. I can say this without any reservation. I'm more of an expert on lenses than anybody else on YouTube. Don't like it, don't care. It's a fact. The best lenses on earth for black and white portraiture rendering without flash photography, which of course adds for sensor saturation in digital photography, are some of these low element count lenses, Zeiss, Voigtlander, Old Nikkor lenses, various other exceptions. They just are absolutely best because they have the best low gain, low SNR, signal to noise ratio, intertonal gain. They make black and white photography look the best. Not my opinion, it's a fact. It's called image fidelity. And they're not that sharp. You know, here's a perfect example. I think this is a 6 element. This is the Yashica 5 centimeter f2, not radioactive lens. This is an old lens. This lens has incredible bokeh. It's awesome for portraiture, even though it's a silly little 50 millimeter lens. It's absolutely incredible. This isn't that what people say. Well, how sharp is it? It's not important. What this lens is best at, sharpness, is not important. The most amazing lenses that have incredible, strange, some people would say strange bokeh, cat's eye bokeh, swirly bokeh, freaky soap bubble bokeh, which is, and you take a picture of a dewy field, and it's absolutely incredible. Those lenses are not sharp. So, right tool for the right job. You need to ask the right question. Same reason why I can never answer a question to anybody that asks me, well, what lens or camera should I buy? Well, I don't have enough information. I need more specific details. What's the budget? What do you plan on shooting? So take that into consideration before listening to any of these other you know, less than intelligent YouTube talking heads on, you know, these YouTube photography channels. They haven't got a clue. Well, I recommend this because it's the most sharp. It's like, well, that person is asking about a portraiture lens. Extreme sharpness in portraiture, with very rare exception, is absolutely unimportant. How it renders, what's its bokeh. Like I said, there is crossover between all of these categories, obviously necessitatively so. So these people are misleading people, and on top of their affiliate links, and they're causing them to spend money on stuff that they should not be spending it on, because you're making recommendations for things that they're not really asking about. Like, I do this. I do wedding and portraiture. Well, now you're recommending, you know, some YouTube channel as well. Well, I recommend this because sharpest lens ever. He's got fast autofocus is also, too, not important in portraiture. You know, unless you're chasing somebody around, that's not portraiture. That's like street photography, which is a kind of portraiture, but not really. You know, you don't have any issues like stand over there, don't move your head. Who cares how fast a portrait lens is? The portrait lenses for Fujifilm, for example, the 56mm 1.2, it's not fast. Who cares? Pose, you're right there. Yeah, turn your head like, they're not moving. You know, I might move it just a little bit, you know, because I can't hold still due to caffeine. It's not important. People say, well, you know, what's the best portrait lens for Fujifilm? I'll say, well, how fast is it? Well, who cares? It's a portrait lens. Too much caffeine. Actually, I've had no caffeine today. Just been drinking water, thankfully. Anyway, hope you liked this video. Hope it cleared things up. This chart link is below. You may not need it, so thanks. Goodbye.